Great. So, Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad. We begin in the name of Allah. All praise and thanks is for Allah, and we send our blessings upon our Master Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Alhamdulillah, ala kulli hal. We praise Allah in all states and in all conditions. Welcome to all of y'all for joining us on this timely webinar, this conversation, this emergency meeting to really kind of feel out what is it that we can do collectively as a community. We know that there's uncertain times. There's something different happening every day since inauguration. And, just so y'all know, we're dedicated to the work and we're dedicated to doing this work with y'all organizing on the grassroots level, thinking at the policy level, and just being holding each other to be in a space of hope and inspiration so that we can continue to do our work at our localized level. So, myself, I'm Ishraq, the organizing director here at MPower Change. I'm helping with a lot of the programming and organizing workshops that we'll be talking about later today. And we're joined today with our executive director, Linda Sarsour, and our political director, Yasmine Taeb, to give us a little bit of context of the political environment that we're in and what's kind of our North Star and how are we going to be moving forward. So with that, I'm actually just going to hand it straight to you, Linda.
Thank you so much, Ishraq. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. May peace and blessings be upon you all. I think our political and legislative director will give you a lot more of the technical stuff that we're hearing coming out of this administration. But I kind of wanted to lay some groundwork here. I think that there's a lot of, chaos and confusion and a lot of people feeling very overstimulated by so much information that's coming out and also so much tragedy. I just learned that a young Muslim American sister from our community, our Indiana Muslim community, named Asra Hussein, was one of the lives lost on the American Airlines flight that crashed yesterday in Washington, D.C. So people are grieving. People are grieving everywhere, all across the country on so many different issues. There's our undocumented families are scared, our students are scared in the schools, workers are afraid to go to work. So we are living in some very troubling times. And so what I'm here to tell you, all of you, is that I was alive in Trump 1.0, and so were you. And we're going to survive again. Now, we know that along the way, and we look back at history in this country, there are going to be people in our communities, vulnerable community members, people around us, people that we love, who are going to be sacrificed along the way. And it's going to be outrageous and it's going to be tragic, but we cannot give up and we have to fight. There is no let's wait and see. Let's just see if we can let this ride out for 4 years. We got to be on the record, and we got to make sure that this administration knows that we are going to do the best that we can with what the resources that we have to protect one another. And that requires us being responsible stewards of information. Some of the things that have troubled me on the internet, especially, is the way in which people are sharing information. You already know your neighbors are scared. You already know that there's so much misinformation. If you cannot verify an image of an ICE agent location, if you yourself have not seen that location, if you are not in touch with someone that's directly in the community where this picture has taken place or this video has taken place, please don't share it, because what you're unintentionally doing is creating fear amongst people who are already afraid. And we don't want to add more fear and anxiety to those who are already feeling these things. For me, I know that there is so much we can do to build power, to stay and protect one another. One of the most powerful moments of my organizing career, a lot of people think it's the Women's March because I was one of the co-founders of the Women's March. Actually, for me, one of the most powerful moments of my organizing career was during the horrific, year and a half that we had of the peaks around COVID. And I'll tell you why. Because the idea of mutual aid networks, which were around prior to COVID, but really became kind of like the center of our communities all across the country, taking care of our neighbors, checking on the elderly in our communities, picking up medications for people who are not able to do that on their own, going to pick up groceries, gathering groceries for families in our community who were not able to do that for themselves. There are people in our community who had lost jobs at that moment. So us being able to show up for one another. And it taught me the power of community. It taught me the power of knowing my neighbors. And we are living in a digital era where the only interactions a lot of people have are on the internet. So the things that I want you to do, the things that are going to give you true hope, is get to know the people around you. Oftentimes we live in apartment buildings or we live on a street. We don't even know the neighbor across the street. We don't know who lives two doors down from us. This might be the time to go to our neighbors and say, hey, look, I live at this address down the block. I just want you to know, if you need anything, here's my phone number. I'd love to be of support to you. And I hope that you can be the same for my family. Just getting to know people, just going back to what your family's probably told you about 50, 60 years ago, when people were, when people would come to the neighborhood and people would welcome them to the community, people would bake things, people would knock on each other's doors. We got to get back to that. We are at a time in this nation where we really are all we got. We cannot put our hopes in the government to defend us. We cannot put our hopes in people who have self-interests that may not be aligned with all of ours. And right now, the most vulnerable people in your community are scared. And the thing that we could do the most right now is be confident in ourselves that we are going to survive this and we are going to come out on the other side more powerful than when we went in. And right now, you are going to hear every day a new executive order is going to be signed. Somebody's going to put a clickbait headline up there and they're going to tell you that Donald Trump said he's going to do this and Donald Trump said he's going to do that. And yes, there will be executive orders that will be enforced and implemented that are going to be truly harmful to our people. And I'm not going to deny that nor take that away from you. But I also know Donald Trump well enough to know is that he'll sign anything. He'll sign anything to say to his supporters, look, I did my part. I told you I was going to do this. I'm doing it. And a lot of the things that he's going to be proposing are going to be illegal and people will challenge him in the courts. The first thing that he started with, as you all know, is birthright citizenship. Immediately, a judge was like, hey, hold on a second. That's not happening right now. And that it's the 14th Amendment and requires a constitutional amendment. So my point to say to all of you is we really came here to tell you a few things. Number one, MPower Change is going to be one of the many organizations that we hope you turn to for information, for ways to take action. We hope to be stewardess of good information, of valuable information, of accurate information. Because when people say knowledge is power, that's not a cliche. That's actually a true statement. When you are well informed, when you have all the information available to you, guess what? Then you are able to act accordingly and appropriately and strategically and effectively. So we hope to be a place that you could turn to for accurate information. We are also people who have staff who are experts in policy and experts in these areas. So when we tell you to take an action, we're not telling you to take an action for the sake of taking an action. Someone sat and power mapped. We understand that this action taken towards this person in power is a way to influence change. So we're not just telling you to do things for the sake of doing things. We really think very thoughtfully and very deeply about the actions that we ask you to take with MPower Change. Ishraq's going to talk about this later on in the webinar, and I hope that you stay, and I hope that you stay in contact with us. One of the things that is very important in this moment, and it's important in all moments, is it's not enough for us to count on some organizers or some activists or some national organizations or some community organizations. You got to count on yourself. And that means that you need to also be trained. What does it mean to be part of a mutual aid network? What does it mean to start a mutual aid network? What does it mean to organize in a local campaign in your community about an issue that you care about? What does it mean to be an ally, to be in solidarity with communities? So as long as you're centering those communities, these are things that we can learn. This is not things that you just wake up in the morning and you just have all the answers to everything. None of us here came to this organizing work, many of us decades ago. We didn't come here knowing everything. We are still students of this movement, and we want to be able to teach you the things that we learned over time. Some of us have learned the hard way, and we want you not to learn the hard way. We want you to learn from our mistakes and our experiences over the many years that we've been organizing. And so for me, I feel clear-eyed. I'm trying to stay as calm as I can be. I want to stay clear-eyed. I want to stay focused. I want to stay strategic, because our people and your neighbors and your family members are counting on you in this moment. And like I said, I'm not going to lie and say that everything's going to be fine, and in 4 years we're just going to come out on the other side and it's going to be fine. No, there are going to be very tragic things that are going to happen within these 4 years. But I also want you to remember that tragic things have happened in this country before. We experienced COVID. We have experienced the post 9/11 era. We have seen the surveillance of our Muslim American communities. We have seen mass deportations below whether we want to admit it or not. This has happened before. We have seen, the internment of Japanese. We have seen Jim Crow, the modern day slavery of mass incarceration. We are seeing climate catastrophe. So I want people to know that we have been here before. We have seen police brutality. We have seen the killing of Black and brown folks across this country at the hands of law enforcement. We went through a Muslim ban. We went through Operation Wetback. There have been many moments in history where we've came here, where we sacrificed and our ancestors sacrificed, and because of them we are here today. And now it's our turn. It's our generation. So I don't feel all doom. I'm not waking up every morning being like it's the end of the world, because it's not. It's not the end of the world, and there are people before us that have experienced way worse, my friends, than a Donald Trump. And so I hate, again, stay informed, stay connected, stay in touch, get in community, find a political home. If you think MPower is your political home, we welcome you here. We welcome you to find a political home locally in your community. And lastly, all politics is local. And I hate bringing up the political conversation, but that's kind of how we got here in the first place. A lot of people wake up every 4 years on a presidential cycle. That's not me. I don't work every 4 years. I work electoral. I do electoral organizing every year, because every year there's an election, two elections, sometimes 3 or 4 elections in your local communities. Like, for example, in New York City this year, we have an unprecedented race for New York City mayor, for New York City comptroller. We have multiple city council seats, and these are the city council members get to decide how money is appropriated in our communities, gets to decide how our initiatives and projects and things that impact our communities are funded. Same thing with the New York City mayor. And many of you have these races in your local communities, all the way from school board up to, again, municipal and state races. And then next year, we're back to midterm elections. And we need to be able to elect members of Congress who are aligned with our values, so that we could, at least at the very minimum, block what this administration is going to attempt to do legislatively. So again, it's a lot of work to do. We are here for you. We are in this together. We are going to come out of this. I'm not afraid of Donald Trump. I'm not afraid of his executive orders. I know they will harm people, but it doesn't scare me to the point of silencing us or silencing me. And we're not going to be silent here. So I appreciate you all for being here, for leaning in this moment, because I promise you there are a lot of people that are counting on you. And I'm going to pass it back to Ishraq. Or I can just introduce our next speaker today. I am very proud of the entire team at MPower Change.
Sorry, I had a
Lots.
tech issue.
That's fine. I got it, Ishraq. I'm very proud of the team here at MPower Change. Oftentimes, you only see us behind emails, and our names are in your emails, but there are real human beings here that do work, that get up every day to fight for you and fight for all of our communities. There are people here who do strategy, where we sit in meetings and decide which campaigns are going to be the most effective. And we also always want to win, and our campaigns are focused on winning, even when we don't win. But our goal is to win. And one of those people that are in our team here at MPower Change is Yasmine Taeb. She is an attorney. She's an organizer. She's someone who's formally run for office. She's been involved in our progressive movement spaces for a really long time. And we're very grateful to have her on the team. Look, doing the things I don't want to do, which is to track policy, to track the outrageousness of our Congress. And she brings us the information, and she breaks it down for us in ways that we can understand, because not everyone here is a policy expert and not everyone's a lawyer. So we really appreciate Yasmine and all the work that she does. So introducing to you our political and legislative director, Yasmine Taeb.
Thank you so much, Linda. That's so incredibly kind of you for the gracious introduction. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us. Just echoing what Linda noted, we know that we're in the midst of just a daily, minute by minute, hour by hour chaos, fear, and uncertainty, unfortunately, because of this administration's xenophobic, anti-immigrant, anti-refugee policies, as well as the folks are aware, the recent Laken-Riley Act that Trump signed into law yesterday. So I wanted to just give a kind of a quick overview of some of the anti-immigrant actions and policies that are being employed by this administration right now, and then just some key recommendations. And we'll definitely leave some time for everybody to ask questions at the end. What we want to make sure we do right now is, given just the amount of fear and uncertainty in our communities, by our families, by our coworkers and neighbors, we want to make sure that our communities are prepared to respond, and just very simple recommendations that can really help our colleagues, coworkers, neighbors, family members, our community members, to ensure that we push back against this administration's unconstitutional, illegal policies, and we have tools at our disposal to do that. So just very quickly, as folks know, Trump also once again issued a refugee ban on the first day that he came into office, with countless refugee flights that have been canceled, very similar to his first term, where he is now decimating the U.S. refugee resettlement program and bringing it to a screeching halt. Mass raids and deportations, as folks are seeing, are happening across our country, especially in major cities. Trump yesterday issued an executive order authorizing the detention of up to 30,000 undocumented immigrants at Guantanamo detention camp, which is outrageous and reprehensible. He has reversed TPS. These are protections for those from Venezuela. It now puts 600,000 people at risk of deportation. And delving just further into his, mass deportation, detention, his so-called protecting the American people from invasion executive order. The EO in particular targets border crossers for prosecution, to expand criminal prosecution of families crossing the border. This, as folks remember, led to family separation under Trump's first term. He's targeting NGOs that provide immigrant services. The executive order essentially requires a review of all federal contracts with NGOs that provide services, seizing the distribution of funds to those NGOs, and terminating any contracts that do not pass the review. It removes immigrants, deports immigrants without due process. The executive order essentially tells DHS to apply expedited removal and similar procedures that lack due process to individuals here in the US for less than 2 years. There's a host of other kind of, problematic provisions. But the other thing I just wanted to flag is, I'm sure folks are now seeing in news reports, is DHS has revoked the previous administration's sensitive locations policy, which now allows ICE and CBP to target hospitals, churches, mosques, schools, and other sensitive locations. There are efforts right now by members of Congress to try to introduce legislation to counter that. And the Laken-Riley Act that passed both the House and Senate was signed yesterday by Trump. And this anti-immigrant, really just outrageous legislation requires a mandatory immigration arrest and detention, which could be indefinite without access to bail, of any undocumented person convicted of or merely arrested for burglary, theft, larceny, or shoplifting related offenses. There's also no statute of limitations in it, and no mechanism for the individual to essentially contest their immigration detention in order to resolve any sort of underlying criminal charges against them, even if charges are even brought. And to just give you a very quick example of who is profiting off of these raids and detentions and deportations and harms to our community and neighbors and family members. So yesterday, it was revealed that Core Civic, which is one of several private prison giants that stands to gain from Trump's campaign, promised to carry out mass deportations of undocumented immigrants. They wrote a $500,000 check to Trump's inaugural committee last month, according to a newly filed disclosure, one of several this week, that reveal which companies bankroll the inaugural festivities, essentially. The other kind of policies and EOs that I want to quickly cover, because they impact a lot of our community members. So the travel ban that was previewed on January 20th, as well as anti-Palestine policies that was also previewed in the same executive order. So on January 20th, Trump issued this executive order essentially laying out that there's going to be an upcoming travel ban, as well as policies targeting and intending to deport international students engaging in advocacy for Palestine. So we actually were not expecting the anti-Palestine EO to come out until February 19th, but as folks may have seen, it was actually signed last night. Well, we can drop some of those links in later, and like have some kind of key recommendations in how to respond to that. The travel ban portion of the executive order, we're not expecting it until March 21st, but given this administration's kind of chaotic and unpredictable timeline, I recommend that folks be prepared that it's going to be dropped and finalized prior to March 21st. In terms of just a couple of key recommendations for our undocumented brothers and sisters, and also family members and community members who are going to potentially be impacted by the travel ban and the anti-Palestine EOs. So Abdullah, if you can kindly drop the link for the Know Your Rights flyer that Muslims for Just Futures has made. So I recommend, if you know anyone that could potentially be impacted or targeted in the mass raids and deportations and detentions, please share with them a Know Your Rights flyer. Please ensure that they know that even if they have ICE coming into their communities and neighborhoods, terrorizing our communities, knocking on their doors in the middle of the night, know that they have rights and they absolutely do not have to open the door to law enforcement. Make sure that they do not open the door to law enforcement unless they see a valid warrant signed by a judge for their arrest or a valid search warrant. It's incredibly, incredibly important to counter really these outrageous and reprehensible policies that this administration is trying to employ, and thinking that they can just come into our communities, that we're afraid and we're sitting under a bed and we're just going to open the door and just willy-nilly go with them and get deported. And I just want to ensure that we provide our friends and family and neighbors with the tools that they need, and for them to feel empowered to say no, to not open the door, to not let them in, even if even if they see a valid warrant signed by a judge, an arrest warrant. You have every right to simply open the door, say you're coming outside, close the door behind you, and make sure that the law enforcement ICE agents are not going inside your apartment. I mean, it's just really heart-wrenching seeing what's happening to our communities. And every day we're seeing communities in Chicago, Northern Virginia, areas in New York and Florida are being targeted. And there's very clear ways that we can push back, and we need to fight this administration's policies. In terms of the travel ban and the anti-Palestine EOs, so the one thing I do want to flag, because it's very alarming and problematic with the travel ban EO, is that executive order includes retroactive language in it, meaning that Trump is going to try to deport those that were admitted to the US on or after January 20th, 2021 from the list of countries in the travel ban that he's going to issue. So I just want to note that Trump has no authority under any sort of statute or law, and this has to be under the Immigration Nationality Act, and he doesn't have the authority to do that. So I don't know how he's going to follow through with trying to apply that language retroactively, but I just wanted to flag that's in the executive order that was previewed on January 20th. And in that executive order, as folks remember, there was also language in there about targeting and deporting international students who advocate for Palestinian human rights. Again, as I noted, we were not expecting that executive order, that anti-Palestine executive order, to come out until February 19th, but it was actually signed last night. So for international students that are aware of, that have been advocating for Palestinian liberation and human rights, please make sure that, and I hate saying this, but we recommend that these students lock down their social media accounts, make sure that these students are back in the States, they limit travel abroad. Please get in touch with us or Palestine Legal if you know anyone that's impacted by this anti-Palestine executive order that was signed last night. And with respect to the travel ban, So we do not know which countries are going to be included on the travel ban that he's planning on issuing, but you can bet that some of the same countries that were on the initial Muslim ban during his first administration, so Iran will likely be on it. As soon as the ban is issued, we plan on having an emergency call to discuss the details and make sure that you have the information you need to be able to protect yourself, your families, and your neighbors. I would just recommend that, for those from those impacted countries, from the initial Muslim and refugee ban, from the first administration, from his first term, make sure that you're in the US if you're on a visa from any of those impacted countries. And in terms of advocacy, the No Ban Act, which was introduced in response to Trump's original Muslim ban, is expected to be reintroduced next Tuesday by Representative Chu and Senator Coons. Please do reach out to your House member and senators to tell them to co-sponsor and support the bill's swift passage. We do plan on doing a ton of advocacy around this next week once the bill drops on Tuesday. And then finally, very quickly, just wanted to speak about some of the nomination fights. So, I mean, I think folks are pretty aware that just about every nominee that is being put forth is unfit to serve in the position that they were nominated for. Lots of incredibly outrageous and unqualified nominees, including Tulsi Gabbard for DNI, who had her hearing today. Hexit for DOD secretary, who has made remarks such as kill all Muslims, who was barely confirmed for the DOD secretary position. We'll be focusing heavily on Huckabee's nomination for ambassador to Israel. He's absolutely unfit for the role. He's a staunch Islamophobe, has denied the existence of Palestinians. We don't know at the moment when his confirmation hearing will happen or a final vote in the Senate for his confirmation, but the hearing could happen as early as February, and we just want folks to kind of be prepared for that. And we're doing a ton of advocacy around that. We'll just quickly drop the link for the action right here. And happy to take some questions or answer any concerns you may have. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Yasmine, for actually kind of getting into the nitty-gritty of all the issues and challenges that we're facing and the stuff that we are going to be on top of at MPower. So for folks right now, we just wanted to open it up. Feel free to drop some questions, any clarifying questions that you may have in the Q&A feature, so that way it'll be easier for us to read that, or just drop it in the chat. I know folks were asking some very specific questions in the chat around, what to do if you're an undocumented immigrant and you're driving and, ICE pulls you over, or some kind of scenario pieces, but feel free to kind of go through that, Yasmine, and I'll try to kind of pull up things that are up. So someone had asked, in addition to reporting ICE sightings, when we see ICE, what else can we do to help? And Linda, you can also answer. I'll defer to y'all to answer that.
The first thing that I'll say, number one, before you do all of that things, you should definitely either review some Know Your Rights material from groups around the country that have these materials. So for example, the New York Immigration Coalition is a great example of that. The Illinois Coalition on Immigration Refugee Rights. There's so much resources, and I think our folks are going to start dropping some into the chat. Because you also have to know what your rights are, even as you're recording ICE, the amount of distance and things of that nature, and what you can record and how and where. You just want to make sure that you're doing the right thing for yourself as well. There are also, there's some folks saying that some organizations even have hotlines where they're kind of reporting these things so other folks can verify these places and have folks on the ground. But the point is know your rights, because our undocumented neighbors, they also have rights. People assume because you're undocumented that you don't have rights in this country. You need to make sure that you tell everyone that's undocumented, yes, you do have rights. I'm going to pass it to Yasmine because she's a lawyer, but I've been through so many know your rights training. I feel like I'm like a little mini lawyer sometimes, but I'm gonna let Yasmine tell you.
Yeah, so sorry, I missed the question. Is it basically what else can we do if we see ICE and
in addition to maybe recording the interaction, are there other things people can do?
Yeah, that's definitely something that I would recommend, making sure that you also reach out to local immigration groups in your community that are taking legal action against ICE. I mean, local ACLU chapters are waging a ton of litigation, making sure that they know of the interactions that you're seeing, sending them any evidence you have. In particular, I would say video is very compelling. Photographs, I mean, in particular, again, I can't stress enough about how many families have been terrorized and separated because some bogus attempt of a warrant, some bogus paper was presented. It was not a valid warrant, and these poor families left with law enforcement. They were detained and deported. I mean, I can't stress that enough. If you can, I'm trying to figure out how we can even spread that information in our immigrant communities, but that's the most helpful thing you can do, is just to make sure that your neighbors and your friends know their rights and know that they absolutely should not go with law enforcement, with ICE, if they do not see a valid warrant.
And the one thing that I also say to people, this is just to be prepared. Like, it's not to invoke any type of fear in anyone, but the bottom line is ICE oftentimes is looking for specific people. And it happens that when they're looking for specific people, they may be in a place with other people, and you may be one of those quote other people. And what I mean by that is oftentimes when ICE is executing an arrest, they end up taking other people that they assume to be undocumented. And then later on through the process, you find out that you're a legal permanent resident, or they find out you're an American citizen. And most people have been kind of not carrying around like things like IDs or things that prove their citizenship. So if you are, for example, an American citizen, people have always laughed at me for many years. For my entire life, I do not carry my driver's license anywhere. I actually carry my American passport everywhere that I go. It's the ID that I pull out at a hotel. It's the ID that I put out at the airport, even if I'm traveling domestically. Some people have those passport cards. They look like a driver's license, but they're from the kind of U.S. Basically, they're like the card version of your American passport. And I don't want, and I don't say that to scare anyone, but I'm just like, if you have it, might as well put it in your wallet, might as well carry it in your bag, because you may be sometimes in the wrong place at the wrong time, and you want to be able to, as fast as possible, be able to prove your immigration status so that you could be released if you are to find yourself in the situation.
Sorry, I think someone asked about what does it take for ICE to get a warrant. So when we say a lot of times they show up with these fake fraudulent warrants, is so for a warrant to be valid, it needs to be signed by a judge. So a lot of times these ICE agents will show up like at someone's work or at their apartment, a house in the middle at 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, and try to show some piece of paper that's signed by like DHS or some immigration officer. That's not a valid warrant, right? But if they're catching you at like a vulnerable time, a vulnerable place, and if you're right, like if you're not a lawyer and if you're already feel like you're gonna get snatched up because you're undocumented, you're just not gonna think about that. And that's exactly what they're trying to do, is they're thinking they have the power, that we have no power, that our community members and neighbors have no idea what's going on. They don't know what the laws of the land are, and they're just gonna go. So, but yes, so for a warrant, sorry, and I'm just answering the questions yeah. So for a warrant to be valid, it needs to be signed by a judge. It's not valid if it's just by DHS, signed by DHS or an immigration officer.
Yes, and also I will just say that, and there's more kind of questions that I'm kind of answering in the chat. Obviously, this kind of webinar that we have today is public facing, so this is being streamed. People are going to watch it later, so there are some sensitive information that people who are organizing are not going to put out all the information of all the things on these types of public spaces. This is why I said find a local political home, find a local mutual aid network, so that you're able to do the things. We don't have to advertise what we're going to do to protect our immigrant communities, meaning that, for example, God forbid your next door neighbor is taken by ICE. There are going to have to be mechanisms in place locally. For example, what happens to their children if they don't have another adult in the home, something like that, because they may take the adult but not the children. If you are a landlord and you have a building or something of that nature, to Yasmine's point, that also applies, that you can't, that's your property. ICE can't just come to your property, even if you have tenants on it, if they don't have a judicial warrant. Like, they just can't just barge into apartment buildings or family houses or multi-dwelling, properties just because they're ICE. There are laws in this land, and our job and our power is to make sure that those laws are enforced. So, for example, if you're a landlord and somebody's knocking on your main door, you can say, "Hey, you got a warrant? Push it under the door." The other mistake people make is people open the door right away. And sometimes there are rogue agents that will just go and violate your rights and don't care about the law. So don't open the door. Say if you have a glass door, ask them to put the judicial warrant against the glass so you could read it and make sure that it has the right address on it, that the name of the person that they're looking for is in fact in that location, that they have all the different kind of pieces on the judicial warrant has multiple pieces of information. Or if you don't have a glass, tell them to slip it under the door so that you're able to read it for yourself and make sure that they have a warrant. So again, my recommendation to everyone here is that you want to protect yourself as an ally, and we also want to protect our immigrant communities, and that is also going to require us protecting the immediate families of some of those undocumented folks if they are detained and where children are left alone or elderly parents or things of that nature. So there's a lot of other things, but once you get to some of these know your rights documentation or go to some of these know your rights training, you can ask these types of questions in a different space.
Well, are there any other questions that stuck out to y'all that y'all would like to cover before we kind of go into what offerings will have?
I'll just say one last thing, Ishraq, around remembering that there are laws, right? And I know that people will say, a lot of us, as you probably know me very well, I've engaged in nonviolent civil disobedience. This is who we are. We are a nonviolent movement. There are many powerful tools at our disposal. Some of that is going to be solidarity, information, and resources. Connecting some of our immigrant families with local immigrant serving organizations, legal organizations in their local community. Believe it or not, these organizations exist mostly everywhere, including, believe it or not, serving rural communities, because a lot of our undocumented families are working on farm and farmlands and are living in rural areas of America, of the United States of America. So I want people to know that we are a movement that is trying to make sure that the more information that you have, the better you are going to be equipped to deal with these types of situation and these raids that are coming. And Yasmine did say this in the chat. As you know, in the past, churches, schools, hospitals, there were things that were off limits. And right now, some of these things, according to Donald Trump's administration, are off limits. But there are still things that principals and teachers and security officers can do in schools to ensure that ICE is not operating in the schools again without judicial warrants. There's things around minors. Like there's a lot of things that we could go and maybe Ishraq, one of the offerings in the future is specifically to bring in some legal experts on immigration and kind of immigration raids and have them go through step by step. We're kind of giving you more basic information, high level information, but we want you to know that on the MPower side, we're going to do what we can to provide the information you need locally so you could protect those that are around you locally. And I think the best way to protect people that you love is to make sure that they also have all the information that they need, but also for you to protect yourself. Because let me tell you about law enforcement in this country and ICE in particular. We know many stories where ICE has detained people that have legal status, and sometimes has taken a day or two or even a week till people kind of sort their situation out and are then released. So again, you need to be careful as well. And I think one of the next offerings we could do, Ishraq, is to provide that kind of very detailed know your rights training here.
Absolutely, and I appreciate that. And I can segue into some of what our offerings look like. But Yasmine, if there's anything that kind of is sticking out to you or any thoughts that you wanted to share before we transition next steps, I'm happy to hand it to you.
No, I think Linda covered, and I think we answered most of the questions. Thank you so much.
Well, Barakallahu fikum, Yasmine and Linda, for sharing your thoughts and your wisdom and experience in this. So as Linda was mentioning, for us at MPower, we are our purpose is to be a mechanism, to be like a cover and like a resource for our communities for whatever the fight looks like. If it's 2 years from now on the electoral side, many of you may be familiar with our My Muslim Vote work, and that our kind of position was to build the electoral muscle of Muslims. We're going to continue to do that. We've not forgotten kind of these opportunities that we'll have to continue to flex our power. We're also going to continue to provide, resources as best as we can, crowdsourcing from our community, from other organizations that are doing their work. We're not looking to reinvent the wheel here. And as Linda was mentioning, we are also very keen on providing very particular kind of trainings and offerings that seem relevant and useful for folks. So if it sounds like that there's a need for having more conversations with a legal team that can really kind of break down some of the rights for in the midst of these ICE raids, we are happy to kind of put that together. So given that, I really wanted to share out like the kind of breadth of what we can offer. So one, we are a power building, a grassroots organizing group. We are committed to building grassroots organizing power in the spirit of congregation-based organizing, in the spirit of grassroots organizing, where we really get to build community that's agile enough and that is bringing our best skills forward to really protect ourselves. So in that way, we are inviting folks to join us for online organizing trainings, inviting you to join our offline organizing trainings. We are happy to talk about some of our electoral strategy work as well as we continue to build strength in numbers. We also want to be providing specific organizing skills for folks. If folks are looking for, in the past, we've done trainings around how to run like a direct action, how to run listening sessions that may be a little bit more internal facing, how to have an effective action with your elected officials if you're making an ask around them, how to leverage your digital advocacy tools or comms tools to kind of bring forth your narrative and really kind of be able to kind of sway public opinion within your ecosystem. We also want to be, providing as many KYR resources as we can in this moment. Again, these are kind of deeply unsettling times, and there's a lot of stuff that we are anticipating, as Yasmine alluded to with the travel ban coming out next week. We're going to have to be able to provide resources and support for our family members, our communities that are not going to be able to come back and forth into the country. So we want to be able to provide that. And then lastly, the thing that Linda had mentioned at the top of the call, we want to be able to serve as a hub for political education. We want to be able to provide accurate and correct analysis of the advocacy work that we're doing. If we're opposing a certain appointee, as Yasmine had mentioned with Huckabee, or education around the specific bills and specific executive orders that are coming through, we want to be able to provide those as a resource for y'all. And so I think this link was floated around in the chat, and I'm going to drop it again. But this is our way that we are able to gauge what are folks specifically looking for. We have some options that, if there's something that you're specifically interested in, feel free to check that. If it's something that's not covered there, but y'all are thinking out of the box that, hey, we don't actually have the resources or may not have the capacity to do so, I would say that we at MPower and through conversation can be a place to provide some of those resources or support and be able to even connect y'all with other organizations. We don't believe that, like as Linda mentioned, if you find us to be your political home, we welcome you. We want y'all to organize with us. But if you feel that there's another vehicle, another organization, another community that will be helpful, and you don't have a connection or an introduction, you would like an introduction to that organization or some resources in your community, we're more than happy to help out with that. So feel free to sign up on the form, reach out to us. Our team, the organizing team in particular, are the ones that will be going through anyone that signed up that has expressed a need for resources or has an idea or some kind of training that they're looking for, that will follow up and connect y'all with the right pieces. So I think I did my 5-minute stump speech over there. Cool. I think we're going to drop that link again right there. And that MPower Changemaker site also has the resources page that Yasmine was mentioning so many times throughout the conversation. Like we have KYR links, some of the advocacy pages, some of the political education pieces around the executive order work. So if you go to MPower Changemakers, you'll see both the sign-up page as well as the Know Your Rights resources. And with that, maybe I will give it to you, Linda, for last word before I formally close us out.
I think this was wonderful, and these are the kinds of spaces that give me hope. And I hope that you all felt some sense of, a little reprieve. Felt like there are people in your movement, in your communities that are seeking information on your behalf, who are bringing you information that you need, and that are fighting for you. And I hope that this is a message that you take to your children, to your neighbors. And as Ishraq said, we're gonna get through this, but we're gonna have to do it together, and we're gonna have to do it through, again, being part of organizations that are doing the work that we love and the work that is aligned with our values. So we're here for you, my friends, and we're gonna hustle and we're gonna fight, because that's what we know how to do, and because our people deserve it. So I'm excited, and again, they keep dropping the link in the chat. Just really go up and sign up so that you can kind of get up-to-date information, and definitely go to the MPower Changemakers site, which is where you're also signing up, again, where there are resources already available. And just take that link and just share it around and just say, hey, sign up with this organization. They'll be sending out information. Sign up with this organization. They're providing resources. So again, whatever you learn, you're gifting it to others. So thank you so much, folks. And we appreciate all the support that you give us here at MPower Change.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everybody. We're going to just close out. The recording will be shared with everyone that's RSVP'd for this webinar, and it will also be on our social media. It's on our Instagram, so you can follow us on all the social media channels. Feel free to share those links, as Linda had mentioned, and a lot of folks sound like this is their first time being in MPower's joining an MPower webinar. The easiest way to stay in touch with us, go to empowerchange.org, follow us, look us up on social media, take an action. We're an organization that's about action. So if there's an action that's kind of resonating with you, sign up over there, and that's how we're starting to track. And then these specific sign-up pages are a way for y'all to have more of a two-way conversation with us. With that, we'll close out. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa nastaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. We praise and thank our Creator, and we repent to Him, and that we ask Him for the blessings and protection and the strength to be able to protect the most oppressed, and to give us the strength to kind of overcome these trying times. Thank you so much, everybody.